I think the biggest misconception about victims of terrorism is that the attacks happen and then we're fine a few months later and then everything goes back to normal, and our lives are never normal again. So in December, at the end of December of 2001, I left my job and I moved to Israel to volunteer with organizations that were working with victims of terrorism. And then a year and a half after I moved to Israel, I was on a bus in Jerusalem when a Palestinian terrorist boarded and detonated. And my right eye, I could barely open just enough to see the roof of the bus had fallen in, and the man's head in front of me, and he wasn't moving. And I remember for a split second after the blast, there's this silence. And I always say it's not the silence that you hear outside when the crickets are in the summertime. It's literally the silence of death all around you. And it's a split second, but it feels like so much longer. And then after that split second of silence, my ears started ringing. And I started screaming, and luckily there was somebody outside who heard me. I found out a few days later that there were 17 people that were killed on that bus that day, or I should say murdered, and over 100 of us injured. So I know I'm lucky, and I know that my time here is not yet up, and I was spared for a reason. And I made a decision after that I was going to make sure that I was not going to be the victim that the terrorists wanted. I was going to make sure that I was going to live my life showing the opposite of what that day was all about. I didn't see the death around me. The people that were there that survived, that saw it, I'm sure psychologically have much more trauma than I did in that sense, because I don't have any visual from the attack. When I returned back to Israel at the end of the summer, which I was determined to do because I wasn't going to let the terrorists win, that's when, within the first few months back, that I started feeling a little bit of anxiety. So the doctors felt that I probably pushed aside my own trauma because I felt like I was being a voice for other victims. I don't know why this happened to me, but again, the next day I made that decision. I wasn't going to think about why did this happen to me. It was, what am I doing going forward? How am I going to make sure that what happened here doesn't define me, but empowers me to do other things in life and make sure to take advantage of every opportunity. And I don't differentiate between myself and somebody else who has psychological injuries. We all have different things that we're dealing with when it comes to long-term trauma. And the idea is not how the things that divide us, but it's the things that bring us together to help us heal and move forward. Do you ever really heal from what you've been through when it comes to terrorism? And the truth is that we always talk about it as our new normal. This is our new normal life. It's not something that we ask to happen. It's not a club that any of us asked to join, but at least we have each other. And I think that to me has been, for myself, the strongest part of my recovery in healing and moving forward is connecting with survivors and bereaved all over the world, and knowing that I have an extended family. And the only way that victims are going to move forward and out of isolation is knowing that they have the support of the outside community as well as the victims community. We can't do this alone. It's not just about those of us that have been impacted. It's also about others that have not been impacted, that are just there to support. It doesn't matter if you can't relate to what the person's saying. Just you listening to them and having them share their story, you are helping them to heal. You are a part of their healing process. So it's really important that people understand that for the victim, it's just as important sharing those words as it is for the people to hear those words. To me, we are stronger together. I think that encompasses everything. That's the strength behind strength to strength. I don't think there's any reason why I survived over anyone else except for the work that I'm doing today. It has to be my driving force to do the things I'm doing, because if I didn't think this way, then I probably would let the trauma and the victimhood take over. But I don't want to be that person. I don't want the terrorists to win, because once they win, that only fuels the fire for them to do more. And I want to try and do everything I can to stop terrorism. And the best way that victims can stop the terrorists from succeeding is moving forward and showing them that they may have done something, but our lives are not going to be destroyed, and we're going to continue, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to do things and make the world better despite what we've been through.